As a municipal tax collection operation has turned international after Israeli police raided the UNRWA compound in East Jerusalem, removing the UN flag and raising the Israeli flag over the site. ILTV's Alec Pollard has the latest.
Police officers, backed by municipal enforcement teams, entered the Jerusalem complex, seizing furniture, computers, and documents, all loaded onto trucks. Authorities say it was a standard debt collection operation, citing more than 1 million shekels in unpaid city taxes. They say UNRWA ignored multiple warnings. The building has been empty since January, after Israel implemented new laws banning UNRWA from operating on Israeli territory, following allegations of Hamas ties, incitement in schools, and evidence that terror groups used UNRWA facilities during the war. But UNRWA and the United Nations are calling the raid a direct violation of international law, insisting UNRWA is exempt from taxes under the 1946 UN Privileges and Immunities Convention.
So, according to Israel, UNRWA owned about 3.5 million US dollars in unpaid tax and interest. Is that theory accepted by the UN?
No. It is not applicable under the general conventions that cover the relationship between the United Nations and member states.
So which means this is actually a violation of international law.
That would be a correct interpretation by you.
The question looms, was this routine tax enforcement or a sign of Israel tightening its campaign to dismantle UNRWA Jerusalem entirely? For now, the Israeli flag still flies above the eastern Jerusalem UNRWA compound, and the international fallout is just beginning.
It's been confirmed by the Prime Minister's office that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet U.S. President Donald Trump on December 29th to discuss the next steps for Gaza's future. More in this report from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The trip will be Netanyahu's fifth visit to the U.S. to meet Trump since the president's return to office less than a year ago, but the first since the administration brokered a ceasefire and hostage deal ending 2 years of fighting. Hebrew media suggest the meeting will likely take place at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. It's also reported that the Prime Minister will spend a week in the U.S. with diplomatic developments expected during his stay. The two leaders are expected to discuss advancing Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan, security talks with Syria and Lebanon, and regional issues. The Gaza plan envisions Hamas disarming, a Palestinian technocratic body running Gaza, and a multinational force deploying as the IDF withdraws. PMO spokesperson Shosh Bedrosian said the two leaders will review future steps and phases in the international stabilization force of the ceasefire plan.
I can share with you that the Prime Minister will meet with President Trump on Monday, December 29th. They will discuss the future steps and phases and the international stabilization force of the ceasefire plan. Let's remember how this ceasefire plan came to be. With the military pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu put on Hamas while our troops entered their stronghold of Gaza City, and the diplomatic pressure President Trump put on Hamas. This is why we are here. We cannot forget how we got here.
Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, is in Jerusalem. Waltz met Netanyahu and praised Israel for reopening the Allenby King Hussein crossing for aid to Gaza. Waltz also stressed the need for stability in Judea and Samaria. Waltz referenced rising Jewish extremist violence in the territories which the Trump administration has been addressing in recent weeks. Later, Netanyahu spoke at a special Knesset session called by the opposition to discuss what it called the collapse of Israel's international standing. Netanyahu dismissed the debate topic, calling it a complete detachment from reality. The Prime Minister declared that claims that Israel's position had weakened were a wave of lies. He referenced his upcoming meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump and ongoing contact with Russia.
And now joining us to discuss the U.S.-Israel relations and the Prime Minister's upcoming trip to the United States is former MK and former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Michael, thank you for joining us today. Always a pleasure to have you on. First, I want to ask you, what is your prediction for the Prime Minister's upcoming visit to the U.S., and how will it impact the U.S.-Israel relations?
Well, good to be with you, Emily, as always. Listen, prophecy is not my strong point. I'm a historian, and I have enough problems predicting the past. But if we can base, Netanyahu's fifth meeting with this president on previous meetings, we can get maybe a good sense of what the meeting is about and what could be the outcome of the meeting. And by the way, there have been different meetings. There have been strained meetings. There have been very friendly meetings. This meeting comes in the background of the 20-point peace proposal advanced by the Trump administration, signed by virtually every nation in the region, with notable exception being Iran. And but the big problem, that in itself is a tremendous accomplishment, the return of all of our hostages, except for one. I'm still wearing this pin because Ron Kvili's remains have not been returned. But having said it's a great diplomatic achievement, but it's stuck. It's stuck between basically point one and point two. Point two is the disarmament of Hamas, and it hasn't happened. And Netanyahu is going to try to clarify how that might happen. And if the United States doesn't have a clear path forward for doing it, and from my best understanding, the goal is to get Turkey and Qatar to squeeze Hamas and get it to give up its weapons in some way, and hopefully not in just a performative way, but a substantive way. If that's not going to happen, what is Israel to do? And what are the next steps forward with regard to Gaza? And it's many, many steps. It's the deployment of the so-called International Stabilization Force. It's the fate of the 53% of Hamas, which is of Gaza, which is under Israeli control. Many, many questions. And beyond that, if you have patience, Emily, it's Lebanon, Syria, and Iran.
Well, as you mentioned, Israel is in a very difficult position with this Gaza plan. Still, no country stepping up to be a part, at least forward-facing, of this international force. No answer as to who will disarm Hamas and how. What are Israel's theoretical options, both practically and diplomatically?
Well, practically, Israel could resume the fighting with American backing. The Israeli army, Israeli defense forces could continue their advance into those areas under Hamas control to root out Hamas at tremendous cost in terms of our soldiers' lives, even Palestinian lives, and certainly in terms of Israel's image in the world. And Israel would never do that without express backing of this administration. I don't think we would do it on our own. The other option, in many ways is the easier option, is just to sort of adjust to a new status quo, where Hamas is basically bottled in this small area of Gaza. It cannot easily get rearmed, cannot easily get money into the Strip. People there live in misery with no hope of improvement. And to just leave that status quo and hope that Hamas will not be able to sort of revamp its missile firing or rocket firing capabilities and once again open fire on Gaza communities or as far north as Ashkelon and Ashdod. That would be the hope. And you take it from there and see, okay, what can we do if the status quo is maintained? Can we advance toward the goal, for example, of expanding the Abraham Accords to include Saudi Arabia and other Sunni countries?
Well, speaking of diplomatic pressure, we're on the heels of the Doha Forum in Qatar, where no Israelis were present. We see increasing soft power efforts from Qatar to influence the West. And based on the Trump administration's recent statement, it seems to be working. What are the ramifications of this for Israel?
There are many. We have succeeded in humbling to a large degree the Shiite axis in the Middle East, run by Iran and Hezbollah, and we run the risk of replacing the Shiite axis with the Sunni axis, which is Qatar and Turkey. Turkey is demanding a role in Gaza. It appears that at least parts of the Trump administration support that desire on the part of the Turks. Qatar is in there. For Israel to put Turkey and Qatar into Gaza is a very serious strategic threat to us, I think to the entire region. And we must resist it to the greatest degree possible, all the while doing our utmost to remain on the same page with the Trump administration.
Now, before I let you go, I do want to get your take also on this raid of the UNRWA offices in East Jerusalem. I mean, the UN body has already been outlawed here in Israel for their associations with Hamas, but they've continued to operate in some capacity. Is this raid, the first step in shutting down UNRWA for good?
Let us hope. Let us hope. UNRWA is a source and a force for continued conflict in the Middle East. It teaches tens and tens of thousands of young people not to make peace with Israel, but to continue the battle for quote-unquote return. It is staffed, and we know it's been staffed in no significant measure by active terrorists. We know that it is the only organization like it in the world that perpetuates the Palestinian refugee issue by designating Palestinian, the descendants of Palestinian refugees from 1948. We're talking about grandchildren, great-grandchildren, still have refugee status, even if they have citizenship in another country like Jordan. Perpetuates the conflict. So the degree to which Israel can disband, dismantle, and get rid of UNRWA will be good for Israel, but ultimately good for the Palestinians themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we have also seen, of course, that there are several countries who, some of which for the first time have announced that they will not be funding UNRWA, this organization that is so controversial, as you mentioned, and such an unfortunate thing, given that the mandate for the United Nations itself is something that is honorable, yet something that's been so perverted, as we have seen throughout this war, unfortunately. We do have to wrap up, but I want to thank you, former ambassador and former MK, Michael Oren, for joining us today.
Your dream apartment in the holiest city in the world is just a click away. Am Yisrael Chai, the lifeline for so many chesed operations in Israel, is holding their annual Dream Raffle, where one ticket only can buy you a luxurious apartment in the heart of Jerusalem. Don't win the apartment? No problem! All raffle proceeds from all tickets go directly to one of the incredible organizations that Am Yisrael Chai supports. And for the first time ever, the apartment is fully furnished. Don't miss this incredible opportunity to actively donate to Israel's functionality and, on the way, potentially score big and win the apartment of a lifetime. Scan the QR code now to join.
Well, all but one hostage has been returned as the search for Ron Gvili's remains continues. Today, Hamas and the Red Cross say they have tried and failed to find the last Israeli hostage's body in their most recent search in eastern Zaytun, Gaza. Hamas operatives and Egyptian workers, accompanied by members of the International Committee of the Red Cross, have been working in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City to search for the remains of the last deceased hostage, Police Master Sergeant Ron Gvili. Al Jazeera says Red Cross and Hamas teams now concluded operations without finding Gvili's body. Major General in the reserves Nitzan Alon, who served as the IDF's main man on hostage negotiations since the October 7th massacre, confirmed that Hamas is having trouble locating the body of Gvili, stating that Hamas has objective difficulty in finding the body and that it's related to the chaos they faced immediately after October 7th. For now, the Gvili family waits with bated breath for the return of Ron's remains, pushing hard for no advancement to phase 2 of the Gaza deal before all hostages have been returned. The IDF continues carrying out a wave of airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The army says the latest strikes targeted Hezbollah sites, including a training facility used by the terror group's elite Radwan force. According to the army, the Radwan force training and qualification compound was used by the terror group to plan and advance attacks against Israel. In addition, the IDF says it struck several buildings used by Hezbollah and a rocket launching site in southern Lebanon. The army said the targets that were struck and the military training conducted in preparation for activities against Israel constitutes a violation of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon. Staying in the north, where the IDF is digging in for winter, forces of the Mountain Brigade under the command of Division 210 have completed a full brigade-level exercise in the Mount Hermon and Lebanese Har Dov sector, aimed at maintaining and strengthening readiness for emergency scenarios and extreme weather conditions in the area. As part of the drill, the brigade's reserve and regular forces, together with medical units, practice rapid transitions from routine to emergency, rocket fire scenarios, terrorist infiltrations into outposts, and the simultaneous evacuation of dozens of casualties. New infrastructure was built and winter gear was distributed to troops serving in the sector. Well, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has designated the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, as foreign terrorist organizations, effective immediately. The executive order mirrors a move made last month by Texas, which is already facing a lawsuit from CAIR. The group says Florida's action is a political stunt and plans to sue as well. DeSantis justified the move as CAIR, a body officially tied to the Muslim Brotherhood, which he links to Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel. Hamas is another branch of the Muslim Brotherhood's organizations. CAIR, however, strongly denies any connection to Hamas. Florida's order comes amid heightened national security of Islamist advocacy groups and growing pressure from Republican officials, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio suggesting federal action may follow. This move comes only a few weeks after President Trump instructed the State Department to designate chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terror organizations at the federal level. Well, men from across the U.S. are uniting to support Israelis impacted by the war, from bereaved families and injured soldiers to small businesses struggling to recover. Joining us now via Zoom is Dr. Steve Katz, emergency medicine physician and founder and chair of the Jewish National Fund USA's Brotherhood Mission to Israel. Steve was with us in the studio earlier this year, and the third annual mission is now set for February 25th through March 4th. Steve, it's so great to have you back with us. I want to start just by asking you, what is the Jewish National Fund USA's Brotherhood Mission? Who's it for, and how does that fundraising aspect work?
Thank you for having me. The Brotherhood Mission is all about connecting Jews from the diaspora, in this case mostly America, to our brothers and sisters in Israel. And our only goal is to perform as many acts of loving kindness for that 1 week for our brothers and sisters in Israel, and to raise as much money for those projects as possible. Last year we raised $2.4 million, the year before $1.1 million, and this year we're hoping to raise obviously a lot more, hopefully $3 million or more.
Now, since launching these missions after October 7th, as you mentioned, more than $3 million has already been raised. What have been some of the most powerful moments from the past missions, and why did it feel so urgent to do this now?
I think after October 7th, we all need to step up. This is not the time to sit on the sidelines, whether you're in Israel, in the military, or whether you're a civilian in the States. I think we all are one people, Am Yisrael, and we all must stick together. Some of the highlights were visiting Rimon Farms, which is a therapeutic farm in the south that supports the needs of children in distress, PTSD for soldiers that have served Israel so valiantly, Shomer HaChadash and Adam Va'adama, creating the future leaders of the state of Israel, supporting agricultural needs and security for kibbutzim and moshavim. We've met with former hostages. We've met with Sagi Dovev and the amazing work that he's doing at Tel HaShomer Hospital with injured soldiers on a daily basis. This particular year, we're having a huge party on Purim with Naftali Aklum and the Ethiopian community in conjunction with a bunch of combat IDF units. And I could just go on, but our goal is simply to help our brothers and sisters in Israel in every single possible way that we possibly can for 1 week straight.
Now, as you are recruiting for this third mission, what's new this year, and what do you hope that participants and the Israelis they're supporting will walk away with?
What's new this year is we're spending more time at less places. So, for example, we're spending a full day in the Golan Heights with the mayor and deputy mayor of the Golan to do a building project. We have a general contractor from the States who's going to be with us. So we're going to be doing a big building project there for 1 full day, 45 guys working. We're doing a project with the Ramat HaNegev region in the south, similar project. And we're doing a big event the first night we get there with Next October, which is a brainchild of Itzar Shai, whose son unfortunately fell after October 7th. And he created this beautiful organization that connect new high-tech companies in memory of those that were bereaved. So we're doing a big event with the families of the bereaved with Next October.
Now, if someone is watching and wants to be a part of this mission, how can they get more involved? How can they support the important work that you're doing in all of these Israeli communities?
Sure. JNF.org/Brotherhood Mission has all the information, has all the previous videos and newspaper articles, and outlines exactly what we're doing. We are nonpartisan. The only partisan activities we have is that we're fiercely committed to the people of Israel.
All right, I want to thank you, Dr. Steve Katz of the Jewish National Fund USA.
Thank you.
The Israel Antiquities Authority, together with the Tower of David Jerusalem Museum, announced on Monday that they uncovered the remains of a 2,100-year-old wall dating back to the Hasmonean era. This discovery is still being debated by historians as the mystery behind this archaeological finding is still unresolved. ILTV's Devo Klein has the full story.
The Israel Antiquities Authority staff have uncovered a remarkable finding. Underneath the Tower of David's site, excavators discovered the remains of a dismantled border wall, a wall meant to keep the holy city of Jerusalem fortified. But there are discrepancies. Why was the wall taken down? And why does the carbon dating refer the wall to a post-Hanukkah era after the Maccabean revolt? Multiple interpretations are offered, but excavators from the Israel Antiquities Authority are saying that the wall could have been taken down as a gesture to then Greek king Antiochus, not to be confused with Antiochus, the Hanukkah story villain. Archaeologists believe that around 134 BCE, 3 decades after the Hanukkah story, Jerusalem was attacked again by another Greek king. To save Jerusalem from yet another siege, the Hashmonaim leader at the time agreed to destroy the city's fortifications and pay the Greek king 3,000 talents of gold that he withdrew from King David's sepulchre. The gesture saved the city, and the evidence remains as a testament to Jewish bravery of 134 BCE. The Tower of David complex has been excavated for years, and still today, new findings are linking the Jewish people to their history in Jerusalem millenniums ago.
Well, the flu came early this year to Israel and is hitting hard with 5 times more cases than last year. The Center for Disease Control records 394 new influenza A cases in 14 hospitals in November, with children accounting for 163 of them, and with vaccination rates under 15% amid a sharp rise in flu cases and 3 child deaths from complications. The Health Ministry's epidemic control team called an emergency meeting to confront the issue. The dominant strains is influenza A H3N2, which can cause more severe respiratory problems, especially in people with weakened immune systems. Storm Byron hit Israel overnight with intense rainfall, especially in the north, marking the start of a rapidly intensifying weather system. Nahariya reported 43 millimeters of rain, Eilan 38, Akko 19, Atlit 15, and Tel Aviv 15 along the coast. Meteorologists warned this is only the first wave, with 100 to 200 millimeters expected in coastal and lowland areas over the next 48 hours. Rainfall is forecast to strengthen tonight and spread nationwide by tomorrow afternoon, with temperatures dropping and storm conditions intensifying. The peak is expected Thursday evening through Friday morning, with cold, intermittent rain continuing into the weekend. The Israel Nature and Parks Authority has issued urgent warnings, including a full ban on entering riverbeds and avoiding stream banks due to risk of sudden collapse. Fire and rescue services urge the public not to cross flooded roads, not to enter basements or underground garages, and to stay clear of flood-prone areas. Storm Byron has already caused extensive damage in southern Greece and Cyprus, with widespread flooding and major disruptions to transportation networks. And now let's take a look. What began as a municipal tax collection operation has turned international after Israeli police raided the UNRWA compound in East Jerusalem, removing the UN flag and raising the Israeli flag over the site. ILTV's Alec Pollard has the latest.
Police officers, backed by municipal enforcement teams, entered the Jerusalem complex, seizing furniture, computers, and documents, all loaded onto trucks. Authorities say it was a standard debt collection operation, citing more than 1 million shekels in unpaid city taxes. They say UNRWA ignored multiple warnings. The building has been empty since January, after Israel implemented new laws banning UNRWA from operating on Israeli territory, following allegations of Hamas ties, incitement in schools, and evidence that terror groups used UNRWA facilities during the war. But UNRWA and the United Nations are calling the raid a direct violation of international law, insisting UNRWA is exempt from taxes under the 1946 UN Privileges and Immunities Convention.
So, according to Israel, UNRWA owned about 3.5 million US dollars in unpaid tax and interest. Is that theory accepted by the UN?
It is not applicable under the general conventions that cover the relationship between the United Nations and member states.
So which means this is actually a violation of international law.
That would be a correct interpretation by you.
The question looms, was this routine tax enforcement or a sign of Israel tightening its campaign to dismantle UNRWA Jerusalem entirely? For now, the Israeli flag still flies above the eastern Jerusalem UNRWA compound, and the international fallout is just beginning.
It's been confirmed by the Prime Minister's office that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet U.S. President Donald Trump on December 29th to discuss the next steps for Gaza's future. More in this report from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The trip will be Netanyahu's fifth visit to the U.S. to meet Trump since the president's return to office less than a year ago, but the first since the administration brokered a ceasefire and hostage deal ending 2 years of fighting. Hebrew media suggest the meeting will likely take place at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. It's also reported that the prime minister will spend a week in the U.S. with diplomatic developments expected during his stay. The two leaders are expected to discuss advancing Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan, security talks with Syria and Lebanon, and regional issues. The Gaza plan envisions Hamas disarming, a Palestinian technocratic body running Gaza, and a multinational force deploying as the IDF withdraws. PMO spokesperson Shosh Bedrosian said the two leaders will review future steps and phases in the international stabilization force of the ceasefire plan.
I can share with you that the Prime Minister will meet with President Trump on Monday, December 29th. They will discuss the future steps and phases and the international stabilization force of the ceasefire plan. Let's remember how this ceasefire plan came to be. With the military pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu put on Hamas while our troops entered their stronghold of Gaza City, and the diplomatic pressure President Trump put on Hamas. This is why we are here. We cannot forget how we got here.
Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to the UN Mike Waltz is in Jerusalem. Waltz met Netanyahu and praised Israel for reopening the Allenby King Hussein crossing for aid to Gaza. Waltz also stressed the need for stability in Judea and Samaria. Waltz referenced rising Jewish extremist violence in the territories which the Trump administration has been addressing in recent weeks. Later, Netanyahu spoke at a special Knesset session called by the opposition to discuss what it called the collapse of Israel's international standing. Netanyahu dismissed the debate topic, calling it a complete detachment from reality. The prime minister declared that claims that Israel's position had weakened were a wave of lies. He referenced his upcoming meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump and ongoing contact with Russia.